What's up, guys? Joker here, and it's time for another story time video. That's why I'm gonna be, I guess, calling this series for lack of a better name. But yeah, I mean, let's get into it. My life isn't really that exciting. When I talk about these story time things, it's just mostly, I'm just living my life, and just like it turns out, life is pretty weird. Uh, this is like one of those weird times, one of those unfortunate times. They're good weird, and then there's bad weird, and this is definitely a bad weird. So I was just going into work like any normal person does, any time of the week, and we have a parking garage, so people get behind you and stuff like that. You feel like you're being a douche if you're just like gonna do the little back thing. So instead of doing that, I quickly parked, regularly in, and I was probably like, you know what, this is good. But I was next to a pillar in these parking garages, and like in this parking garage, I have a bunch of pillars. In my apartment complex, weirdly, we have a parking garage that's attached to the apartment. We don't have like we don't have pillars. We have we have supports, obviously, but we don't have pillars like next to every parking space like this one does. And I feel like everybody already knows what happened by now. When I'm pulling out, because I don't like where I'm parked. Like it was like it's next to a pillar. It's kind of like far away. I was gonna go back and get another parking spot. Um, I pull out, I bang the pillar, and I'm like, shit. I move forward. I get out of my car. I'm like, okay, what the fuck? What is this? So it just looks like, oh, it's just the paint. Okay, so it's just the paint that just came off. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Probably be like, just need to go buy something and rub this off. And so I go back to a parking spot, and I open the door. I start like working on it, and it's like some of it's coming off, but like clearly you're gonna have to like do more than just with water and a rag. Uh, but I'm also parked next to this truck, like we're like right next to each other. So I get back, and I'm like, okay, let me go move out of this, and I move to a better spot. And now I can fully open my door, right? And when I do that, I hear this loud pop. I'm like, wait, what? Whoa, what happened? And I look at the door, and I look at it. And it's like it's fine, but there's kind of like this gap between it. So I'm like panicking. I'm like, shit, I'm gonna have to. What the hell is this? And I take it to a mechanic that's like near the place, and dude's like, yeah, when you hit your pillar, you kind of moved your bumper back. So we're gonna have to move your bumper forward to compensate for that and to get rid of the popping or whatever. And the dude's like, I can help you out, not paint the bumper and stuff like that. And it's gonna come out to $1,500. And I'm like, what are you talking about? $1,500 to just move the thing and like do some light paint work too. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like I'm not saying this. I'm like, dude, this guy's like, this guy's on something. There's no way this costs $1,500. I've had work on my car that's $1,500. That makes sense. Like the dealer fucked my brakes when they rotated the tires, and I got new brakes that were like I had to replace my entire brake system. That cost $1,100. So I'm like, how is replacing the brakes? And that included me buying the brakes and then the labor after that. So um, I don't even know like why this comparatively little thing would cost way more. So I'm like, okay, this is stupid. And there's plenty of mechanics all over the city. So I take it to another mechanic, and this guy's like, yeah, this guy like immediately like he walks over. He's like, so you park in a parking garage? I'm like, yeah. How'd you know that? He's like, because we see this all the time. And that's what the other mechanic said too. He's like, yeah, we see this all the time. It's like people hitting the pillar on these parking garages. And I'm like, at that point, I'm like thinking in my head, I'm like, if this is a known problem that has probably gone on for decades, why have people not done it to where your parking garage isn't this stupid pillar on every? Because you need the pillars. That's how they support the weight and stuff like that. Some parking garages are different, and I've known it's obviously newer parking garages do not have this. It's these older parking garages on these like really old buildings that are like that. And you can't just like say, well, then we have to redo this because basically what you're saying at that point is you have to demolish the entire parking garage and rebuild it. And no one's going to do that. So, like newer parking garages, they have like these little support slits, kind of like behind where your parking is, and then there are these large walls too that also act as like supports. So you'll see like you have to have these mirrors so that cars aren't crashing into each other when they're going around those large walls. That's kind of like what newer parking garages have, and you need the support obviously, otherwise everything is going to crash, and worst case people die. Other other worse, not worse than that, but other bad case is your cars get destroyed too. Um, so it's just about structural. There has to be a support, and you have to have a good engineer, good architects that like approve this stuff. You have to have city inspectors come out. I understand why the pillars exist. It's just like there are clearly other ways of doing this though in parking garages, and obviously people do it. And like, yeah, it was pretty stupid that I parked really close and hit the pillar. But at the end of the day, it's like also like the end of the day, it's like if you're getting like any work done on your car, you're getting to where, or you're doing anything to where you can go to someone who can provide comparable service, do that. And also calls people that like know more about this. Like, I called my dad just because it's like I don't know about this. And you can look it up to, honestly, when I looked it up on Google, it was closer to that 800 range of doing this work. And I'm talking like, but for me, in my instance, it's not a lot of work. Like, there's not a huge dent in my bumper. It's just scratches in the paint. And the bumper is like a little back, so they got to move it forward and do some work so it's like fine. Also, the thing is like too, it's like I asked, it's like, hey, can I just drive this car? It's like, yeah, you can drive the car. Um, it's just like that gap is gonna be there, and the gap also might get wider too because you keep opening the door and closing it. It might get wider and stuff like that. So it's just about like knowing your situation, and I think also this is important because it's like I think when you get a car and you're young, you don't know a lot about these things. It's like you got to learn this. There's a lot of things you don't get taught in school that I honestly think they should teach you in school. Like, I think personal finance is definitely something that needs to be taught. Financial management, type thing needs to be taught. I don't know if I made a video or something like this about writing checks. There's definitely kids that don't even know how to write a check, like how to write a check properly and stuff like that. Well, it's just like you YouTube it. When it's like, well, you still got to learn the damn thing. But it's also important that a school teaches you that too, because it's like, why are you? This is important information, and I feel like school should prepare you for at least the basics in life. Um, I think also it's like the thing is like opening a bank account. I think kids just go to like Bank of America or Chase or something like that. It's like you don't have to go to those banks just because they're the biggest banks doesn't mean anything. If you see FDIC insured, the bank's fine because you up to $250,000. You're fine, which I think is fine for most people. Um, but people need to like know that it's like, oh, I don't have to go to this big bank. I can go to these smaller regional banks. I can go to an online bank where it's like they don't have a physical location, they're just online. And usually those online ones, they provide you high savings rate. You can go to a credit union because they just offer better service and better rates for loans and stuff like that in general. But people don't know that. They just go to what you see when you're watching football. You see a Bank of America ad, you see a Chase ad, you see Wells Fargo. If you have a bank at Wells Fargo, I don't even feel bad for you because you're just an idiot. Like with how many like really bad like for banks, really bad scandals. And then City is just a terribly run bank. Um, but that's beside the point. It's just like I made a stupid mistake, wanted to share it. If you've done this before, let me know. I don't doubt there's plenty of people who have done something as stupid as this, whether it's hitting a parked car, hitting a pillar. Um, I don't know. I've heard somebody who like hit a telephone pole. It's like, how does that happen? You're drunk. That's how it happens. But yeah, if you guys want to hear about the story time stuff, I'll probably pull something out there. I mean, my life isn't like, dude. I gotta say this. My life isn't really glamorous. It's like I go to work, I come home, I play video games, I go get groceries, I go to a restaurant. That's about it, dude. It's like pretty regular. And honestly, these last few weeks, I've had some pretty like ridiculous and honestly pretty funny stories. But yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Went on pretty long, so take care, guys. See you later.